Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Naruto was reincarnated as Donquixote Doflamingo, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to see more, comment down below. Way to the academy, her head down, deep in thought. Today was the day. It was graduation day, where she would finally become a proper ninja and attain the rank of genin. The Sakura of the past, the one who had first joined the academy with her best friend, Ino Yamanaka, had always dreamed of this day. Now though, she didn't know what to think. Sakura was not cut out to be a ninja, she knew this. She spent all her time studying, learning as much as she could so she could slide by on her academics alone. While she did succeed in the end, it wasn't something she was proud of. Her grades allowed her to stay at the top of the aspiring Konohamaru rankings, Iruka's class being heavily graded on academics as opposed to physical ability. Probably a way to help the non-clan children keep up with the clan heirs that seemed to take up half her class. But she knew that she wasn't the best Konohamaru there. She may even be one of the worst. She constantly dreaded any of the spars the academy would hold, losing to almost any opponent in one-on-one combat. Test her in anything else, and she would shine. Whether it was creating elaborate traps or casting ninjutsu with almost perfect efficiency, that's where she was at her best. But put her in front of an opponent and it would all fall apart. These were not the only thoughts going through her head. She thought back to the time her best friend convinced her to go to the academy with her, instead of the civilian school her parents wanted to send her. All the hours spent convincing her parents, and look where it led her. Ino Yamanaka, the one who helped her come out of her shell and her only friend, now her bitter rival. Arguing over the smallest things, always trying to get a leg up on the other. She hated it. She used to look up to her, wanted to be like her. Ino was popular, beautiful, confident, and Sakura envied it. She wanted to rise and become her equal. Now, she just wished things could go back to the way they were before, but the both of them were just too stubborn. She thought back to the one who started that downward spiral, Sasuke Uchiha. When she first saw him, she was enchanted. Sasuke was perfect in her eyes, popular, beautiful, and confident. The mysterious aura the boy had only helped to draw her further in. She remembered talking about him to Ino, not yet having learned his name, and just trying to describe the boy. Her descriptions weren't very effective though, with Sakura always squealing slightly in embarrassment during them. Ino would do the same, also telling her about a boy she had developed a crush on. Yes, the day it all went downhill was when they both learned the boy's name. The day they both became bitter rivals. The term soured her thoughts, making her want to gag. Her thoughts drifting on her slow walk to the next turning point in her life. She thought of Sasuke, the popular, beautiful, and confident boy with the mysterious aura, the boy who she was enchanted with. What a joke. It didn't take long for that crush to begin to wane. As the years went by, her confidence lowered from the high they received thanks to Ino. Her fighting skills, her large forehead, the solitude of losing her best friend. It all just piled up. She was a fool to ever think she could win over Sasuke. There was never any chance, no hope that the stoic and cold boy would ever think of her as anything other than an annoyance. After all, she could barely speak 2 words to the boy. Where could social skills like that ever take her with the Sasuke Uchiha? No, the only reason she still even tried was because of Ino. Those fights the two had, pushing and shoving each other, scrambling to Sasuke's side, was one of the few things she looked forward to anymore. Those brief moments together reminded her of better days. Sakura stopped for a moment, pausing to shake her head and lightly slap her hands against her cheeks, shaking the depressive thoughts from her mind. Continuing her walk, she quickly let her mind think of something else, the first thing popping up being one of her classmates, Naruto Uzumaki. When she thought of Naruto Uzumaki, her mind drew blanks. The boy was wild, boisterous, and probably a little insane. She didn't know what to think of the boy at first. She had chosen to speak to the boy one day, finding, despite his outward appearance, he was approachable compared to Sasuke. Naruto didn't glare at her, as if trying to chase her away with sheer force of will. Naruto didn't ignore her when she approached, pretending she wasn't there or acting like she was too insignificant to even acknowledge. Naruto wasn't a stoic and cold boy who she could barely speak 2 words to. Naruto wouldn't frown at the world, pushing away anyone and everyone who just wanted to help him, get closer to him, and just finally make a friendly connection with another human being after so long. Yes, when Sakura thought about the popular, beautiful, and confident Naruto Uzumaki, her mind just went blank. He had done it. Sasuke Uchiha had made his next step in his path. The path that would lead him to Itachi. The boy had trained and labored for countless hours, throwing everything he had at whatever challenge he decided to put himself through on that particular day. Whenever he would tire, whenever he would slow down in his efforts, his eyes closing, resting for just a moment, the darkness that the action brought would show him the blood of his family, and his eyes would snap open. Yes, Sasuke Uchiha had spent blood, sweat and tears to be able to sit here, waiting to be assigned to a team. If only his clan didn't have to spend their blood as well. Sasuke looked at the row in front of him as Iruka continued his speech, staring at the aggravating worm that was Naruto Uzumaki. He was leaning back in his chair, his legs spread out onto the desk in front him, clearly bothering the two students next to him. His hands were folded behind his head and, although he couldn't see it, he knew that he had that smile on his face. His clothes were just as unusual as the ones from his childhood. He wore a white, thin, long-sleeved t-shirt. It hung loosely on his body, with an open front revealing fishnet armor across his torso. He wore bright red pants with pink tiger stripes on them. The pants themselves seemed almost too short, stopping a little past his knees. On his feet were not the traditional shinobi sandals, but instead, black dress shoes, the toes curving up slightly and coming together in a V shape. Naruto had grown too, now standing a few inches above himself. At first, when Naruto had defeated him so easily all those years ago, he had been excited. He thought he found someone who took the life of the ninja seriously, who worked just as hard and knew the same struggles. But no, Naruto Uzumaki was just a damn clown. A clown who didn't pay attention to every lesson diligently. An idiot that didn't work his ass off for every ounce of strength. A moron, who was the best around by sheer talent alone. Naruto Uzumaki was just another prodigy, just like him. Sasuke, feeling his teeth begin to grind together, relaxed his body, letting the frustration he felt leave him. It was just in time as Iruka had just called his name, finishing his boring little speech and grouping the students into three-man teams. He listened carefully for the next name to be called, slightly wary to hear who his teammates were going to be. Sakura Haruno. Sakura, the pink one. Sasuke knew her well. The girl was enamored with him, as were many other girls in his class. He didn't know why either, he would always just ignore them and brush them aside, trying to tell them that he just wasn't interested in any of them. The message would never get through. Still, there was worse he could be teamed up with. As useless as the girl was in combat, if her spars were any indication, she was knowledgeable and intelligent, two important factors that could decide any battle. Yes, Sasuke Uchiha could work with Sakura Haruno. Naruto Uzumaki, the frustration returned. His teeth clenched as he released a small hiss through his teeth. His eyes widened in both shock and anger while his hands, folded in front of his face in his usual pose, balled into one large fist, causing the bones inside to pop. He looked down at the boy and his breath caught. Naruto leaned his head backward, staring back at him, that ever-present grin mocking him. Worse, he could hear it. That strange laughter, that should have been so quiet, almost inaudible, echoing loudly inside his head. Sasuke's hands relaxed, unfolding from the fist they had formed, his teeth unclenched and he looked back up to the front of the class, ignoring Naruto while watching Iruka as he rattled off the other team formations, eventually releasing the breath caught in his throat. Sasuke sat in his seat, waiting for their sensei to arrive. Iruka had eventually left the room as various jonin came to gather their teams. 10 minutes had passed and their new leader had yet to arrive. Sasuke still refused to look at Naruto, staring directly ahead of him at the chalkboard on the opposite wall. At the 1 hour mark Sasuke had decided to simply close his eyes, the room staying quiet almost the entire time. The three of them, Sasuke, Sakura and Naruto, continued to wait in the classroom, everyone else having already left long ago. Sasuke, with his eyes still closed, listened to his new teammates. Naruto had decided to start chewing some gum to pass the time, making the majority of the noise in the room considering he chewed only with his teeth, his toothed smile never breaking. He could hear Sakura scribbling on a piece of paper, writing notes or perhaps drawing something. He had often saw her doodling during class, but the girl was very secretive about them, her hands always cupped around her pencil as she worked, hiding the drawing from any prying eyes. Almost 3 hours now. Sasuke considered himself to be patient and strong-willed, but now, sitting here completely still to maintain his image was beginning to wear on his willpower. Sasuke had opened his eyes every now and then, looking at his teammates to see what they were doing, trying to alleviate his own boredom. Sakura had, at some point, stopped her doodling and sat next to Naruto, the two conversing. Well, sort of. It wasn't much of a conversation really. Sakura would simply just start talking to him, from topics ranging from what she had done days before to what she ate for dinner last night, seemingly rambling. Naruto wasn't ignoring her though, simply taking the role of the silent listener. He would laugh every now and then and answer some of her questions with a simple yes or no, rarely ever truly contributing to the conversation. Sasuke watched the two of them. Sakura, rambling on and on while Naruto sat there, listening and nodding every now and then. He noticed something, looking at Sakura. He had seen her smile before, often being the one they were directed at. He just noticed through Sakura's droning, that she was smiling, but it was different. He remembered her smile being a subtle thing. A lipped smile that was often accompanied by a slight tilt of the head, an attempt to look cute, no doubt. This was different. It was just a bit wider, just a bit larger, slightly showing her teeth. Her head seemed to hunch over slightly as she talked, her posture different than what he remembered. It looked familiar. The classroom door began to slide open, Sasuke's thoughts coming to a screeching halt. A man, a ninja, walked in. The man was strange. Grey silver, spiky hair stood tall upon his head. His face was almost completely covered, revealing only his right eye, expressing utter boredom. The unimpressive man slouched slightly, an orange book held in his hand as he slowly entered the room, slowly looking at the three of them as he finally spoke. How to put this, you guys, are a little boring. Sasuke scowled. This was their sensei. Was he really an elite ninja? The room was silent for a moment before the man spoke again. Meet me on the roof. With his piece said, the man vanished in a small puff of smoke. Naruto moved first, hopping over the desk, he put his hands in his pockets and made his way out the classroom, heading toward the roof. Sakura quickly made to follow him. Sasuke got up, taking a moment to stretch, the blood quickly flowing back into his limbs after he sat mostly still for almost 3 hours. He made his way to the rooftop and, opening the door, saw the rest of his team. Their new teacher was leaning up against the railing on the side of the building, Naruto and Sakura sitting in front of him. Sasuke joined them, deciding to sit next to Sakura, away from Naruto. Well, now that we're all here, why don't we start by introducing ourselves? The man said, sounding as if he would rather be doing anything else. You introduce ourselves, sensei. Sakura asked, as if confused on what she was supposed to do. Yeah, the man replied, you know, your likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams for the future. That sort of thing, he continued, looking at the book in his hand and turning to the next page. A laugh came from his left, a voice following soon after. Hey, Yano, it's usually proper etiquette to introduce yourself to others first. I thought even old guys like you would know that much. The man looked up from his book to look at Naruto, silent for a moment. Then, he sighed, snapping his book shut. Very well, I'm Kakashi Hatake, he said, bring a single finger to his chin, as if in thought. As for my likes, I don't really feel like telling you guys that, he said, nodding at himself. As for dislikes, well, who knows, he continued, shrugging his shoulders. As for hobbies, I have lots of hobbies, his voice was confident at the end there. And dreams for the future, never really thought about it. He finished, almost like he had some revelation. He glared slightly at Naruto. And I'm only 26, for your information. Naruto simply laughed lightly in response. Now, your turn, the pink one. Kakashi's finger pointing directly at Sakura as he rested his chin in the palm of his other hand. Sakura made a small squeak, surprised at suddenly being the center of attention. Oh, well, her voice was shaking, struggling with the simple introduction. Well, I'm Sakura and I like lots of things, yeah, she said at the end, sounding like she was convincing herself. Things like reading and studying and draw, she cut herself off, pausing for a second before continuing. Anyways, I don't like spicy foods, I guess, and I don't really have many hobbies. The girl's mood went from nervous to slightly downtrodden before perking up again. But my dream is to be a really good ninja. The girl was smiling brightly at Kakashi, who, after a moment, nodded and pointed at Naruto next. Now, the vibrant one, Naruto sat there for a second, chuckling before beginning his introduction. Who? Little ol' me. Well, I'm Naruto, of course. Naruto had raised his arms in the air dramatically, emphasizing his words. As for my likes, those are confidential, of course. Can't have anyone knowing about those, ya see. Hey, he said, wagging his finger as if that were obvious. As for dislikes, Naruto's smile shrunk a little, something Sasuke never thought he would see. He looked closer at Naruto, slightly nervous at what would happen next. His smile returned again, wider this time. Veins began to show in his forehead, wriggling slightly under his skin as if he were clenching his teeth with unbelievable strength. Sasuke had never seen him so angry, and he braced himself to hear what Naruto, the carefree and always smiling boy, would hate so much. Barbecues. He nearly fell over, not prepared for the ridiculous answer. Not waiting for him to recover, Naruto continued. As for hobbies, I often spend my time being better than Sasuke. It's fun, easy to do and, best of all, free. He turned toward Sakura. You should really try it sometime, Pinky. Hey. Sakura chuckled nervously with him, looking very uncomfortable. Sasuke was, very slowly, counting down from 10, using everything he could to remain calm and not lunge at the other boy. I see, Kakashi said, watching the interactions between them, and your dreams for the future. Naruto grinned. That's a secret. Hey, he replied, chuckling quietly. Kakashi looked away from the blonde and turned toward him. All right, your turn, he said with that dull tone of voice. Sasuke calmed himself, taking a small breath before repeating the small speech he had thought up while the others were doing their introductions. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things, and I don't particularly like anything. He said, keeping his flat and monotone. What I have is not a dream, because I will make it a reality. I'm going to restore my clan, and kill a certain someone, he ended mysteriously. With his small speech over, Sasuke looked up at Kakashi, waiting for him to continue. He refused to look at the others' reaction to his introduction, especially at Naruto's damn smile. But if Sasuke had looked to his left, he would see that Naruto was not smiling. Doofy made his way back to his apartment, thinking about his team and the survival exercise that Kakashi had told him about. He wasn't very surprised that there was another test to take before he became a genin. The graduation exam had been far too easy. Needless to say, he was excited. He had never fought this land's elite ninja, and he was curious about what they were capable of. Thinking back to his team, his thoughts drifted to the pink one, Sakura. In his first life, he had taken many under his wing and into his family. A large number of them had issues. That being said, he got the same feeling from Sakura as he did from them. Sakura Haruno was a lonely girl. He would watch as she constantly vied for Sasuke's attention, competing against the other girls. It was something that had been going on since they all had entered the academy. It became a routine after a while, watching her and the other girl, Ino, rush through the halls, trying to be the first to sit next to the boy. Then, one day, something had changed. Sakura had decided to come up to him one day, during lunch and tried to converse with him. He was a little surprised at first. While he was by no means a social shut-in at the academy, his position as top student ensuring he was quite popular in school, Sakura had never shown any interest in him before. Doofy simply sat there for a bit, listening to the girl ramble on. Eventually, this would eventually happen more and more frequently. When it first started, Sakura would barely look at him when she talked, merely glancing up at him every now and then before looking at the ground again, her voice stuttering and nervous. Eventually though, she grew more confident in their conversations, now looking directly into his eyes, without a hint of nervousness. Doofy, for once, didn't quite know what to do. It wasn't the first time some damaged or orphaned child would attach themselves to him like this. Perhaps it was some strange charisma he possessed. Before, Doofy would abuse the connection, using it to absorb others into his family. Don't get him wrong, it wasn't like he didn't care about them. No, it was quite the opposite. Those children became his family, and family was all he had. But things were different now. Before, his family had a clear purpose in his mind. The destruction of everything the celestial dragons loved, with no stone unturned. But now, he didn't even know if the celestial dragons even existed anymore. Sure, he had seen the map of this continent, it being completely unfamiliar, but that proved nothing. It would not be outside the realm of possibility for this land to be just another undiscovered island in the new world. But that possibility seemed to get smaller and smaller as the years went by. It was a doubt that was always in his mind. A whisper that never quite went away, telling him that the people he hated with every fiber of his being could already be dead, and he would never be able to seize his revenge with his own hands. That's why Sasuke's little speech had gotten to him. He saw a bit of himself in the boy, and he knew where his own quest for revenge had brought him. He lost everything. Could he let the same happen to Sasuke? So, there was the dilemma. If he built his family again, what would he do? Would he repeat history, ask them to risk everything for him, just to feed the hate in his heart, desperately searching for an enemy that may no longer exist? Or, would he build it up again, but protect them, risk everything for them instead? Doflamingo just didn't know, his hate still ran too deep. Doofy opened the door to his apartment, walked in and closed the door behind him. He had a test to prepare for. He buttoned up the rest of his white trench coat, using his hands to smooth out the small wrinkles that had appeared. Finishing that, Virgo put his shoes on, exited his apartment and made his way toward Team Guy's exclusive training ground. Doofy had already left earlier that morning to attend his final graduation exam. Normally Virgo would have left at around the same time, but Guy-sensei wished to start their team training session a bit later than usual today. Virgo thought about Doofy and the past few years that the two had spent together. He remembered how relieved he had when he first saw him, sitting on that bench as if it were just another day. He had spent 6 years in his new life by then, utterly lost without his king. To have Doofy return to him was truly a miracle in Virgo's eyes. He thought back to the event that would follow that day, when he had raised his fists against his friend. That had been one of the hardest decisions he had ever made. He remembered the way his fists, usually adamant and unyielding, trembled and shook. Virgo did not enjoy harming his king. But it had to be done. Doflamingo had to become stronger, stronger than he was before, and Virgo was the only one that could ensure that he did. Virgo thought back to the rest of his family, to Diamante, Tribol and Pica. When Doofy had given him his mission to infiltrate deep into the Navy's military ranks, he had been ecstatic. To know that Doofy trusted only him to do something so important meant everything to him. But that mission, the one he would have been assigned to until his death, had been the hardest thing he had ever done. The constant separation from his family wore on him, making each day go by slower and slower. Sometimes, he would have to go years without any contact with them. Being honest, a small part of him was sometimes afraid that his family had forgotten him. That was why, in his last moments when Doofy had thanked him, he was so happy. Because he could feel it, in the way he spoke and in his very words. Doofy had never thanked anyone before, and his words told him that those years of separation had hurt him too. So, Virgo smiled, content with the way his life would come to a close. And now, here they were, just the two of them against an unfamiliar world with unfamiliar rules. Without the rest of the family, Virgo knew they had to be stronger. So they trained. The first time they had trained, Virgo had a distinct advantage. He was far more comfortable with regular hand-to-hand combat, and Doofy had been quite crippled against him without his strings. As the years went by, that gap swiftly began to close. Doofy began to create his own way of fighting, using unorthodox angles of attack, often employing his legs to surprise and severely harm his opponent, in this case Virgo. From suddenly flipping into a handstand, and kicking toward his head, to quickly dropping low to the ground and delivering devastating vertical kicks. The fighting style was, somehow, slightly familiar, but Virgo was never able to make the connection. After a while, the Doofy became extremely skilled in the art of close-quarters combat, but Virgo could still beat him if he went all out. That quickly changed when he had rediscovered his strings. When Doofy had shown him that he was able to recreate his strings, he was shocked and eager to see what he could do now, allowing Doofy to use him as a test dummy. It became quite clear that these strings were different than the ones he given to him by his devil fruit, with some abilities seemingly out of his reach, at least for now. For one, Doofy's main ability to change some of the properties of his strings seemed to be gone. These properties were things such as their temperature or the ability to reflect light. This made Doofy's overheat and 5 chromatic strings attack unavailable for now. Also gone was his awakening ability, but this wasn't much of a surprise. Besides that, Doofy's strings were as strong as ever, able to do almost everything they could before. The only thing holding them back was the amount of chakra he possessed. Virgo snorted to himself lightly at that thought. Everything in this land relied on chakra, so having a large amount it to work with was a key advantage. Doofy's chakra seemed to have almost no limit, the only thing ever stopping him being genuine exhaustion. Virgo was a little jealous honestly. After unlocking his strings, Doofy became a nightmare fight, incorporating them into his fighting style. He would attach the strings to himself and the clouds or surrounding environment, allowing him to simulate floating in the air. He would use this weightlessness to launch heavy kicks that could strike from any direction, and dodge almost any attack, his ability to dodge no longer being restricted by gravity. His strings would often be scattered around the area, often surrounding his opponents. They were razor sharp, and threatened to instantly decapitate someone who wasn't paying attention. Yes, Doofy had gotten much stronger. Virgo walked onto the grassy field, toward his teammates who were already in the clearing. He watched as Rock Lee entered the clearing, his hands behind his back and remnants of his breakfast glued to the side of his face. Neji Hyuga did not know what to think of the boy named simply Rock Lee. He often thought of himself as a rather stoic human being, taking everything in stride with utter seriousness and determination that would never waver. Seeing Rock Lee made him doubt that image. Lee's face was almost carved from stone, never changing even when their sensei would accidentally send him though a tree in a training session with a bit too much youth. Lee was someone who was forged from steel, and that made Neji wary of him. In his eyes, Rock Lee was an anomaly. Everything he had learned in his life told him that the young orphan who had nothing, right from the beginning, should have stayed just that, nothing. But no, Rock Lee was anything but that. He had talent, strength, and the determination to use them to break any obstacle in his way. It went against everything Neji believed in and he refused to accept it. As Lee approached, showing up the same way he always did, exactly on time and not a second early, he turned to Might Guy, an idea forming in his mind. Guy-sensei, he said, grabbing the older man's attention. Might Guy was a strange man, dressed in a bright green jumpsuit and orange leg warmers. The man may look like a clown but he was strong, a master of his craft, taijutsu, and for that he had Neji's respect. Guy looked down toward him, his attention being taken away from Lee's approach. Huh, what is Neji? He asked, curiously. Neji continued on. I'd like to propose something, a spar between Lee and I, he said, keeping his voice flat. We're both strong fighters and I think both of us would benefit greatly from it. Neji made sure to keep his voice and face as calm as he could. One would think that the two would have sparred before, the two being on a team for a year now. But no, Guy-sensei would often take it upon himself to be their sparring partner instead. His absolute mastery of various martial arts making sure they never got too comfortable. Neji suspected that his teacher knew that he did not like Rock Lee, and that was why he would never let them spar. Guy looked down on Neji for a moment in thought. Eventually, he nodded, then revealed a bright white smile, one of his hands offered a big thumbs up and his smile produced a bright twinkle. All right. But, it'll be after today's exercises. We'll have a hard time getting through them if you two are all black and blue. With that Lee arrived on the field, and the team prepared for Guy's grueling workout. The two stood a few feet apart, facing each other, bodies tensed as they waited for the match to start. Neji, his hands out and both palms facing his opponent. Lee, his hands neatly folded behind his back, his sunglasses hiding his expression. Might Guy eyed his two students, wondering if he was doing the right thing. The two had great potential, and he could see himself taking either of them on as a true apprentice of his. But, there were things that held him back. First, was Neji. He was a true prodigy of the Hyuga clan, already showing masterful use of the gentle fist techniques. What made Guy hesitate was Neji's beliefs, that hard work is useless and only those who were destined for strength could achieve it. That mentality went against everything Guy believed in. Then there was Lee. Being honest, Lee was more suitable to take up Guy's mantle, his current fighting style relying on the same thing as his strong fist, using overwhelming physical force to break his opponents. In that aspect, Lee would make the perfect student, if it wasn't for one thing, if it wasn't for how utterly ruthless the boy was. He had been with many missions with his team, and he remembered the first time he grabbed a Genon's first most difficult assignment. Their first time having to end another's life. The mission was to eliminate a small group of bandits located a few days out from the village. He never did understand that. Why would normal criminals choose to operate so close to a place where its children were trained assassins? He would never figure it out. Anyways, they had arrived at the bandits' camp in the dead of night, Guy scouting the area to ensure there were no shinobi among them. He let his students loose, not taking a single opponent himself and relying on his students to finish the job. Tenten had the worst time with it, her weapons revealing copious amounts of blood. She was the most hesitant one, and afterwards had spent days cleaning the weapons she used on this particular night. Neji was the quickest, his gentle fist quickly and efficiently taking his enemies down. Neji's face was as stoic as ever, but Guy could see a faraway look in his eyes after his battle was done. Lee was the slowest, but not out of incompetence or skill. The three of them watched. The man was screaming, laying on the ground with the remains of his arm outstretched toward them, as if asking for help. A moment later, Guy realized that he was asking for help, his screams making him almost incomprehensible. Lee stood over him, his hands curled into fists as they thundered into the man. His punches had a slow and rhythmic pace to them, the sound of shattered bones and tearing flesh echoing across the camp every time they hammered down. Watching, Guy realized with horror that Lee wasn't just attacking aimlessly. No, every punch was aimed with perfect precision, designed to keep the man alive until the very last moment. Soon, the screams had stopped. The arm that had been extended toward them had gone limp. He was dead. Lee stood there for a moment, frozen as his fist was reared back, prepared to deliver another crippling blow. Slowly, he adjusted his sunglasses, then folded his hand behind his back and walked toward his team. The team made camp not too far from the bandits, deciding not to travel home by night. They decided to rest and try and forget about today. Guy, throughout the night, remembered something. His attention had mostly been fixed on Tenten, as he was most worried about her since she was the least skilled out of the three. Still, he was pretty sure Lee would have had to fight more than one opponent. Sneaking away from his team for a brief moment, he made his way back to the camp to take a look around. He had found them. 3 bandits, all dead inside one of the tents. Small, coin-sized holes had been drilled into their forehead. Do you think this is a good idea, sensei? The voice interrupted his thoughts, bringing him back to the grassy field. He looked down to his left and saw Tenten, the one who spoke, looking up at him nervously. Guy flashed a quick smile at the girl, trying to reassure her. There's nothing to worry about. It's just a friendly little spar, nothing more. With that said, he looked at his 2 students, and gave the signal. Neji started the fight, something that was quite unusual. His palms, as quick as lightning, raced toward Lee, who hadn't budged. Just before the first palm made contact, Lee moved. He had never seen anything like it. Lee's body seemed to almost float, bending around Neji's attacks as if he were as malleable as a leaf. Neji resumed his attack, not wanting to give Lee the chance to begin a counter-assault. His attacks quickened but they never met their target. He could see it. Neji's eyes, fierce and surrounded by bulging veins, signaling the use of his Byakugan, began to fill with anger. His attacks became wilder, sacrificing technique and accuracy for speed, desperately trying to touch Lee's seemingly untouchable form. A fist rocketed out from behind Lee's back, not giving Neji any chance of blocking or avoiding it. It slammed into Neji, his solar plexus, with an almost audible crash, stopping Neji dead in his tracks. Neji's hands were still outstretched, a palm stopped just inches away from Lee's neck. His face was blank, eyes unfocused. Then, he slumped over Lee's fist, his arms falling limply to his sides. Lee grabbed hold of him as he fell, gently laying the unconscious boy onto the ground. Guy walked over to Neji, examining him and confirming that there was no lasting damage. He looked at Lee, watching his impassive face. Good job, Lee. That was very impressive. Lee simply nodded, and Guy scooped Neji into his arms, lifting him up. Today's practice is over for today. You guys get some rest. I'm going to take Neji back home to the Hyuga compound. His 2 students nodded, and Guy rocketed off, heading to Neji's home, hoping that the Hyuga weren't too mad or curious on how their prodigy ended up like this. Guy thought about the fight, still wondering if it was the right decision to make. Hopefully, Neji would learn something from this fight, that destiny wasn't everything. Maybe then, he could take Neji on as his apprentice. He knew one thing though. He would never teach Rock Lee his strong fist style, no matter what. This weirdly dressed guy is surprisingly hard to keep track of, thought 8-year-old Konohamaru Sarutobi. He was bored out of his mind today. Udon was busy studying, Mogi was out shopping with her mom, and Konohamaru was not in the mood to hear Ebisu's lectures. Wandering around the village he was named after, he came across a rather interesting sight. He was kind of funny looking, the way he kind of waddled along, almost bow-legged and with a big grin on his face, almost as if he were laughing at something. His clothes were rather fancy looking, exotic in a way, and Konohamaru couldn't help but notice the ninja headband, tied loosely around his waist. This was an opportunity. A chance to see an awesome-looking, young ninja at work, and Konohamaru didn't waste the chance at potentially alleviating his boredom. He began to follow the boy, like an untraceable shadow, hiding behind street lamps and staying hidden under his square-shaped fake rock. He was the very definition of stealth. As he followed, the blonde boy suddenly sped up and turned to the left, entering a small alleyway. Startled and not wanting to lose him, Konohamaru got out from under his clever disguise and ran into the alley. It was empty. Confused, he walked forward into the alleyway, looking around for any super-secret ninja passageways that the boy may have used. Suddenly, a sharp string came from face, making the boy cry out and fall backwards. Instinctively, he put a finger to the spot, feeling something wet and warm. Pulling his hand back, saw his fingers were slightly wet with blood. He looked up from his position on the ground, and could barely out a thin white line, stretched across the alleyway at head level. Is that some kind of wire? He thought, confused. Hey, you should be more careful on who you follow. You never know who they might turn out to be. Crying out in alarm, Konohamaru scrambled forward, under the mystery wire and away from the voice that came from behind him. Quickly getting up and turning around, he saw the boy he was following, grinning at him and chuckling to himself. Konohamaru was quick to reply. Hey, were you the one who put that weird wire there? He cried out, finger pointed accusingly, trying to steady his rapid heart. The boy laughed. And what if I was her? What are ya gonna do about it? He said, leaning down and glaring at the boy. Konohamaru made an audible gulp. I'll tell my grandpa. Yeah, that's what I'll do. And then you're gonna be in a lot of trouble, you hear me? He said with false bravado. The boy chuckled slightly. Well, we wouldn't want that now, would we? My name's Naruto, what's yours, kid? Konohamaru, steeling himself, replied, I'm Konohamaru, grandson of the great third Hokage. He half expected Naruto to quickly apologize, the grin falling off his face as he realized just who he had attacked. He was wrong. His grin widened, as he began to laugh. Well, Konohamaru, tell you what, why don't we forget about this little ordeal and, in return, I'll owe you a favor. Naruto extended his hand, the wire separating them disappearing. Deal. Konohamaru stood there and shook. Wordlessly, he took the other boy's hand and gave it a shake. Excellent, now I've places to be, he said, turning around and walking out the alleyway. See ya around, Konohamaru, he called back, waving his hand in the air to say goodbye. Konohamaru just watched as Naruto rounded the corner, disappearing from view. He said my name. With that thought, Konohamaru dashed out of the alleyway, intent on visiting his grandfather to beg him for a new wardrobe. Those clothes of Naruto's did look really cool. Continuing his steady pace, Kakashi Hatake made his way toward Training Ground 7, eager to test his new students and see if they were worthy of graduating. He snorted slightly at the sarcastic thought. Failing Team 7 was an impossibility, he knew that. A team that had the last loyal Uchiha, and Naruto Uzumaki, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, was destined to pass. The higher echelons of the village would make sure of that. They were both too important to simply boot out of the program. The third had a hard enough time ensuring that they didn't graduate ahead of schedule, after the last young graduate came down with a severe case of parasite. No, failing Team 7 was not gonna happen. Still, the rest of Team 7 didn't have to know that particular detail. Now coming close to the rendezvous point, Kakashi thought of the individual members of his team. First, there was Sakura Haruno, a jumble of psychological issues if he had ever seen one, and coming from him that was saying a lot. Severe depression, attachment issues, low self-esteem and body dysmorphic disorder centered around the size of her forehead. Kakashi didn't know what the Hokage was thinking assigning her to this team. But, then again, who else but Sakura Haruno? The other non-clan children would have even less of a chance keeping up with Naruto and Sasuke. The other clan air teams were designed with specific purposes in mind, teaching skills that its members would be talented in to help them flourish as ninja. Team 7, meanwhile, was a rather ragtag group. No specialization and no purpose, the misfits. Kakashi's team had been the same and so had Jiraiya's. Team 7 was where the misfits, who didn't belong anywhere else, would gather. Kakashi sighed as he thought of his next student, Sasuke Uchiha. He felt a small connection to the boy, reminding him of his younger self. Young, talented and angry at the world, only finding enjoyment on reaching the next level of strength. A young Kakashi could definitely relate. But Sasuke had something that young Kakashi didn't, a rival. Someone could push him to greater heights and form a connection with. Yes, Kakashi could see the one-sided rivalry between Sasuke and Naruto was very important. Without Naruto, Sasuke would eventually separate himself from everyone in the leaf, driving him further and further away. He was a very antisocial boy, with tunnel-like vision focused on reaching Itachi's level of strength. But, his connection with Naruto served as a good way to keep Sasuke grounded, to keep him from becoming a potential flight risk. A good move on the Hokage's part. His thoughts were brought to Naruto, the son of the man that Kakashi had viewed as a second father, a pseudo-stepbrother of his. Naruto was a very unique individual. He had Mei quirks and was a very carefree person. Kakashi thought that he would be like a mix between Minato and Kushina, but no, Naruto was his own special kind of person. If he inherited anything from them, it would be talent. Naruto was a prodigy, through and through. He simply glided on by in the academy with minimal effort. According to the reports he had read, Naruto was a powerful fighter. He was clever and a formidable strategist, with a malleable mind that thought outside the box. He was looking forward to this test and the chance to see him in action for himself. Finally arriving at the clearing, he spotted his team sitting near the memorial stone, waiting for his arrival. Speeding up, he suddenly appeared in front of them, his eye cracking a smile as he gently waved at them. Yo, his students simply looked up at him, Sakura managing to get a greeting out. Oh, good morning sensei. Kakashi's sweat dropped. The funnest part about showing up 3 hours late to everything was the reactions for when he finally arrived. They were making this rather boring for him. Yes, well let's get started shall we, he said, walking up to one of the 3 wooden posts nearby. Reaching into his pouch, he grabbed an alarm clock, set it for noon, 2 hours from now, and placed it atop the center post. He guided his students away from the memorial stone and near the center of the clearing. Turning to his students, he pulled out 2 silver bells and held them in front of his face. Your test is rather simple. I will have these 2 bells, tied to my waist, your objective being to retrieve them. By noon, when the alarm goes off, those who still have a bell will pass, the ones who don't will be sent back to the academy. Sakura suddenly had an alarmed look on her face, panicked. But sensei, there are only 2 bells. Kakashi smiled, very good Sakura, meaning that, at most, only 2 of you will pass this test. We'll begin on my mark. Kakashi waited for a moment, looking at his students. Sakura was shaking slightly, clearly nervous. Sasuke had a glare aimed toward him, his body tensed with a hand near the pouch around his waist. Naruto simply stood there, grinning at him. Start. With that, Sasuke and Sakura promptly disappeared, taking cover in the surrounding forest while trying to think of a plan to steal the bells. Naruto was still standing there. Hey, this is quite the test, old guy. Very clever. Kakashi's eyebrow twitched at the old guy remark, reading into his words. So, he already figured it out, huh? Yeah, he's definitely your son, sensei. Before he could reply, Naruto continued. Still, a test as simple as this is pretty boring, old guy. Let's liven it up. Naruto's grin spreading, he quickly rushed toward Kakashi, who raised his guard. Naruto delivered a high kick, his height only letting it reach up to his chest. Kakashi lowered himself slightly, getting into a better stance to block the attack and prepared to bat the light kick away with his forearm. Things happened a bit differently. The kick had far more power in it than he had expected, almost throwing Kakashi aside, as he slid a few inches away due to the kick's force. Naruto then turned, making a small hop as he sent his other leg to meet the first, kicking the same spot. Just before his second leg made impact, Kakashi focused on the first leg, still being blocked by his forearm, and grabbed a hold of Naruto's ankle, throwing him away from him. He didn't fly far, as Kakashi saw something he had never seen in all his years as a ninja. Adjusting himself, Naruto recovered and then seemed to stop himself in midair, his legs bending as if he were touching some invisible force. Naruto kicked off the air, rocketing toward him. Kakashi, right before Naruto made contact with him, fell backwards into a condensed handstand, using his hands to push off the ground and plant his feet into Naruto's body, who was now hovering over him. Again, something strange happened. Naruto dodged, his body seemingly floating in midair as he was now at Kakashi's side, already launching a kick toward his unprotected side. Exerting more strength, Kakashi continued his initial attack, using it to launch himself in the air and dodge Naruto's attack. Quickly landing on the ground, he hopped back and examined Naruto, trying to figure out how he was seemingly flying. Naruto slowly lowered to the ground, his feet firmly back on the ground. The two watched each other for a moment before Naruto let out a loud laugh. Hey 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 hey. My, you really are a Jonin, aren't you? Gotta say, I was curious how strong an elite ninja was and I'm not disappointed. All that and you're still holding back, not a scratch on ya. Impressive. Kakashi digested his words before relaxing his body, lowering his guard. The same to you as well, Naruto. I had heard you were talented, but that really was something else. I assume you already know the purpose of this test. Naruto chuckled slightly. Oh yeah, the old man would tell stories of it, ya know. How the first Hokage used it to teach him and his team about teamwork. I knew it as soon you brought out the bells. Kakashi sighed as he translated, old man, to third Hokage. Not even thinking about how Naruto would call both the third and him, old, he made a request. Very well, do you mind staying out of this for a bit then? I'm curious to see what Sasuke and Sakura do next. Naruto was silent for a moment, his smile falling for a moment as a thoughtful expression took over his face. Then it returned. Hey hey hey, you can't even fail us if you wanted to, could you old guy? Naruto said quietly, no doubt making sure the others couldn't overhear him. Before he could answer, Naruto continued. Well whatever, guess I'll go take a nap then, come find me when you're done playing. Naruto disappeared afterward, leaving Kakashi alone in the clearing. He sighed, he got the feeling it was going to be a long day. Sasuke Uchiha had watched from his hiding spot in the trees. Watched as Naruto went toe-to-toe with a Jonin. He felt his anger rise, his pride wounded as it demanded to march down there and prove himself just as capable. Sasuke held himself back though, knowing that going in hot-headed would just lead to his defeat. Deciding to wait and follow the Jonin, who was currently walking along a path in the forest, searching for them. After a few moments, a strategy in mind, Sasuke struck. Releasing a spool of ninja wire, he wrapped it around Kakashi, who had a look of surprise on his face, pulled the wire taut to stop his movements and made a grab for a bell. Just before his hand made contact, there was a puff of smoke, Kakashi, revealing himself to just be a rather detailed scarecrow. A substitution, he thought, dashing back into the forest, he made a run for it and headed back into the clearing. A few seconds later he arrived, and turned toward the forest behind him, looking for signs of movement. A good try, but you'll need to do better than that if you want one of these bells. Sasuke turned around quickly, a kunai in hand as he raised his guard and focused on his opponent. Kakashi merely raised his only visible eyebrow, taking one of his hands out of his pockets. He made a come hither motion with his hand. It worked, as Sasuke kicked of the ground, rushing toward him and throwing his kunai at his sensei's head. Kakashi plucked the kunai out of the air with the same hand, as Sasuke made several hand seals that, judging by the look he made, Kakashi recognized. Fire style, fireball jutsu. After releasing a stream of flames from his mouth, Sasuke stood there waiting for the smoke to clear and reveal his sensei's charred body. The smoke cleared. There was no one there. Looking around frantically, Sasuke searched for his sensei, listening for any indication of him. Where will he come from? Behind. Above maybe. Kakashi answered his thoughts. Below, a pair of hands reached out from the ground, grabbing Sasuke's ankles and pulling him toward the earth. When it was over with, Sasuke was almost completely buried in the ground, only his head visible. Spitting some dirt out of his mouth, Sasuke looked up to see Kakashi staring down at him. Earth style, headhunter jutsu, he said simply. Sasuke growled at him, humiliated and struggling to get free. You're pretty good, Sasuke, but not quite on Naruto's level yet. Sasuke's struggles came to a stop, taking in his sensei's words. Tata. Kakashi vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving Sasuke in the ground. Sasuke had stopped moving, still processing Kakashi's words. Anger was slowly starting to boil in his mind. Picturing Naruto laughing at him, mocking him as he stayed one step ahead at every turn. He remembered Naruto's fight with Kakashi, and his anger disappeared. Sasuke looked up to blue cloudy sky, content for a moment, basking in his small revelation. He was right, he just wasn't at Naruto's level. Yet. Soon enough 2 hours had passed, with Doofy napping in front of the memorial stone. The alarm went off, waking him from his slumber. Yawning, he stretched and looked around. Walking toward him was the rest of his team. Sasuke and Sakura are walking with Kakashi, their heads down and a shameful look on their faces. Finally reaching Doofy, the 3 young students sat down, looking up at Kakashi to hear their results. Naruto spoke first. So old guy, how'd they do? Kakashi looked at him for a moment. They failed, he said simply, disappointment evident in his voice. Sasuke and Sakura both lowered their heads. You two failed to see the true purpose of this test. This was not about proving yourselves in a trial by combat, showing that you're the strongest. It was about teamwork. The two looked up while Doofy watched their reactions. Teamwork, Sakura said slightly confused. Kakashi sighed, exasperated. Yes. Did you really think that either one of you would be able to defeat me, a Jonin? You're still just fresh new genin. The only way you would have succeeded was to work together. But there were only 2 bells. Even if we worked together, someone would still fail, Sasuke argued, desperate to find a way to pass the test. That was the point. You were supposed to look past your own interest and look after the interest of the team as a whole. Kakashi sighed and walked up to the memorial stone. On this stone are the names of the heroes who fought and died for this village. All of them understood what it took to be a ninja, sacrificing themselves to ensure that the will of fire lived on. Kakashi's voice was quiet as he spoke, the others listening intently on his words. He looked over to them. Starting tomorrow, we'll be going over team cohesiveness. We'll be starting at 8 o'clock sharp, so don't be late. Sasuke and Sakura looked confused, with Sakura voicing her confusion. Wait, so, we passed, her tone slightly hopeful at the end. Kakashi nodded, yes, lucky for you too, your teammate figured out the test right away. So, for that, I'll allow you to pass. Sakura smiled while Sasuke revealed a small smirk, both of them glancing at Doofy. Doofy chuckled at the two, listening to what Kakashi said next. Now, we are officially Team 7. Drip, drip, drip. In a dark wet sewer, behind a massive gate, Kurama, the 9-tailed fox, was in deep thought. He thought about his container, Naruto or Doofy, whatever name the boy really went by. He had been watching him ever since the two had met 3 years ago. There was something strange about the boy, and he wasn't talking about his clothes or that creepy smile. No, it was something else. For as long as he could remember, Kurama had the ability to sense the negative emotions of others. He could sense them in every human he had ever encountered, but Naruto was different. Yes, never before had he found hate greater than his own. It was like he was drowning in it. Hidden behind that smile was a person who wanted to burn the world around him. So, why was he so friendly toward him? Ever since the two had met, Naruto would simply try and make conversation with him, never asking for his power. No, he would simply stop by, explaining the next way he had tried to bring chocolate with him but it not working for the 100th time now. Every time, Kurama would send him away, Naruto laughing as he did. Kurama could sense negative emotions, he knew there was no deceit behind their interactions. He thought back to the old man's words, about the one who would reunite the tailed beasts and bring them to the proper path. He wondered if the only person who could reunite them, was one who had suffered the same pain as them, and shared the same hate. Kurama laid his head down, closing his eyes. He dreamed of a blood-red moon, and a tall, strangely dressed man standing before it. Whether the man was stopping or causing it, he couldn't tell. He walked through the dark underground corridor, his heart pounding in his chest as fear began to tighten its grip around him. He was getting closer now, his anxiety and fear climbing as he approached him. Soon enough, he was at his door. Gulping audibly and preparing himself, he opened the door, walked in and bowed. He sat in his throne, his complexion pale as he stared with his snake-like eyes. His ink-black hair falling past his shoulders. This was the man that he had served, the man he abandoned the Leaf Village and his fiancée for, something he was beginning to regret. Lord Orochimaru, he greeted. Orochimaru smiled at him, then he spoke, his voice was soft, with an allure that simply drew you in, forcing you to listen. Mizuki, why are you here? Were you successful in your mission? Mizuki gulped, and gave his report. No, Lord Orochimaru. The scroll of seals was too well guarded. Rather than trying to steal it, I came to report someone who might be of interest to you. Mizuki, who was still bowing, didn't dare look at Orochimaru's face, terrified at what he might find. He chuckled slightly, oh. Please, do go on. Mizuki, steeling himself, continued his report. There has been a recent graduate you might take an interest in, my lord, the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. The Nine Tails? Orochimaru asked, curious. Yes, my lord. He was recently made a genin, and his skills are far above even Sasuke Uchiha, the one you ordered me to keep tabs on. The chamber was silent for a moment, before Orochimaru's voice returned. Is that so? He said, his voice holding a small amount of wonder. Excellent work, Mizuki. Mizuki smiled, happy that he had satisfied Orochimaru after failing his mission. He looked up. Thank you. The last thing Mizuki saw was a white snake flying toward his neck. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.